Well, hello everyone, and welcome to a Thursday edition of the Southside Beat here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network. My name is Chris Halicke. Thank you so much for joining live. Greg McAfee not with me today; he is covering Pirates today. But just thank you so much for joining the show here on, like I said, here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcasting Network and our Steelers YouTube channel. And yeah, man, it's been a heck of a week with all of the Brandon Aiyuk stuff. It's been, uh, a couple of exciting practices. Today, Thursday, was not so exciting. It was a pretty lackluster practice. I've called it a glorified walkthrough, which is pretty much what it was. So, but definitely wanted to begin to start to turn the page because the final practice ahead of the preseason opener is now behind us, and the next step is now playing preseason football. And while it's the preseason, it is still the first time that we're getting to look at this team in a stadium against an opponent that's not themselves. The offense will be facing a different color uniform for the first time. The defense, same thing. We'll get to see the kickoff in full speed, full the way it's going to be played. Pretty much their first time of really getting a chance to test it. And so I'm excited to see it. That's what I wanted to kind of dive into before any kind of Brandon Aiyuk discussions, because as of right now there's nothing new in that regard when it comes to the Brandon Aiyuk situation. But I'll be happy to talk about that a little bit later. But definitely want to get into what's going on here to start things off. Tomorrow, which is Acrisure Stadium. Houston Texans coming to town. We'll get a chance to look at this team for the first time in an actual stadium playing football to the best ability that these guys can ahead of the regular season. So, Swan comes in here immediately, asks a good question. Says, "I know it's only the first game, but should we see Arthur Smith in the offense tomorrow?" I would just want to, when it comes to the offense, I think you're going to see a bit of an abbreviated version of what the offense is going to look like. I don't think they're not going to throw everything out there right away. The first team, with Justin Fields at quarterback, Russell Wilson not playing, the first team's going to get a couple series. You're going to see a good amount of the stuff, but again, it's still early in the process. The playbook's not completely finished. They're not done installing the offense. You're gonna continue to see development, and it's going to look like that. This is not going to be the Steelers scheming their way to try to beat the Houston Texans. They are focused inwardly on themselves, their own development. Whether that comes to, as Mike Tomlin put it yesterday, a lot of focus on fundamentals. On the offensive side, that's ball security, that's no pre-snap penalties. Defense, it's seeking the ball, it's doing all of the opposite things. So that is what the focus is. And so when it comes to trying to get a first look, of course, I think we're all going to kind of look and see, okay, what kind of personnel packages are we seeing? How many multiple tight end sets? How often are they going to be using 12 personnel, 13 personnel, stuff like that? How often do they use 11 personnel? How often are they running with 3 wide receivers out there? I understand this sentiment too. Joshua Dobbs here says, after last year, I put 0 stock in preseason. I wouldn't put 0 stock in preseason. I would just be hesitant to react one way or the other. If this team goes out there and they absolutely stink it up, we're talking, let's say the first team offense goes 3 and out, 2 times, and then Mike Tomlin's just like, okay, well, you guys need reps. Let's go out there again, and they go 3 and out again. I don't think you should just be, jumping off of a bridge or anything like that. Like this, all the season's lost. Should it be concerning? Absolutely. And just as we did see last year, if the first team offense looks really good and they score on both of their drives, there's reason for optimism. But again, I would just not overreact one way or the other when it comes to preseason football. Of course, the better they look, that's always going to be a good thing. It just trying to understand that last year when we saw what the offense did with Kenny Pickett in the preseason, that was some major overreaction. Like that was some major overreaction. That was like Steelers are Super Bowl bound. That kind of reaction from some sections of the fan base. I would definitely not go there when it comes to however this team looks. So Vegas TJG says more left tackle, Jones right tackle. That's the way it's looking, but I do think that you're going to see a good amount. You'll probably see a bit of mix and matching either way. It wouldn't surprise me if the first two series are Dan Moore on the left and Broderick Jones on the right, and then there might be a series where Dan Moore is done and they move Broderick over to the left side and Fautanu comes in on the right side. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying it wouldn't surprise me if something like that happened. I think you're going to see a good amount of mix and matching. I think you are. I would be shocked if you didn't see at one point Broderick on the left and Fautanu on the right. Like I said, even if it's for just a series, it just wouldn't surprise me. These tackles are most likely the bookends of the future. At least the Steelers are. They took those guys in back-to-back first rounds for a reason. Dan Moore isn't under contract past this season, so I would think that eventually you could see that. But early on here, I still think, as Vegas says here, more left tackle, Jones on the right tackle. So that's probably correct. But again, I think we're gonna, you are gonna see some mixing and matching a little bit. Here, some good amount of comments on the Aiyuk stuff. We'll get to that soon enough. Stephen A asks, what's the over-under on jet sweeps? Listen, I know jet sweeps already got a lot of hate because that was the play that Roman Wilson got injured on. So I understand the hate. I'll tell you this: throughout 13 practices, I have not seen a lot of them. I could probably count on one hand how many I've seen. Now, it doesn't mean that it's only been 4 or 5, but it's not been very many. I do think that offenses nowadays, it's not like the jet sweep was exclusive to the Matt Canada offense. There are teams that are all around the NFL that utilize them. So if you see one or two tomorrow, don't freak out or anything like that. They're part of the NFL. They're part of football nowadays. It's just not, you don't want to be running them as often as they were running them previously. So, but I would say over under. If you're asking me to put it at a number, I'd say maybe 2. I'll put it at 2. And I might take the over for like 3 or something like that. But Stephen A comes back. Where the heck is Greg? Greg is covering the Pirates today. Remember, Greg has got responsibilities other than just Steelers, and so there will be days where it'll be me on here and not Greg. And rarely you'll probably have Greg solo with me not on here, but obviously I'm going to be on here the vast majority of the time. But Greg is covering Pirates today. He is going to be covering the Steelers game tomorrow night along with myself and DK. So it's the 3 of us there. It's going to be fun. We are still, by the just programming stuff, we're still talking about what exactly we're going to be doing in terms of post-game stuff, in terms of like multimedia, podcasts, things like that. So we'll figure all that out. Let's see. Let's go through here and try to get try to get some stuff, because you guys have a lot of stuff on the Brandon Aiyuk stuff. But just really quick on a contract situation, Mr. CJ Jr. asks, James Daniels is in his last year too, right? Yes, James Daniels is in his last season, in the last season of his contract. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons why they took Mason McCormick was to have him learn for a year behind James Daniels or anybody else that might play right guard and eventually be the successor, possibly even as early as next season. So that, again, that would not surprise me whatsoever if that was the case when it comes to the right guard situation. But yes, James Daniels heading into the final year of his contract. You guys are funny with the Brandon Aiyuk stuff. It's really funny. Let's go through here. Brian asks, does DJ have to worry about losing playing time to Corey Trice? Too soon to tell. That's a gigantic negative. No, Dante Jackson is. I would even go as far as to say Joey Porter Jr. and Dante Jackson are the two starting corners, and there is a large drop-off to the number 3. I don't even know who I would even put at number 3 right now. I think a lot of that is debatable. Cam Sutton eventually, obviously halfway through the season, he'll probably be the number 3, be the primary slot corner, and then if something happened to Porter or Jackson, that Sutton would most likely be the first guy to move to the outside. But in the meantime, until Sutton is available, which isn't until 8 games into the season, there's a large drop off, even counting Corey Trice. His activity has increased as training camp has rolled along. And remember, everybody, we only have 3 practices of training camp left. Today was practice number 13 out of 16. So there are only 3 practices left. But Corey Trice has done more. Beanie Bishop is technically the starting slot corner, the nickel corner right now. So if you want to call him the number 3, I guess, but it's a large drop off. I'll put it that way. That's the best way I can put it. Corey Trice will most likely be in the mix, and maybe the more and more that he practices, the more and more he can move himself up the depth chart. But I think he still has quite a bit to prove. Remember, this is a guy who has yet to step into a stadium for preseason. I think even if he did play in the preseason, he definitely didn't play in the regular season. He obviously got injured early in the process last year. So he still has a lot to prove. A lot to prove. Let's see here. R Barley 18 asks, do you think we'll get a look at the Smith system or just the typical 4 or 5 gap runs, or 45 gap runs? Listen, I do think you're going to see. I kind of touched on this earlier, but I do think you'll see, some of the things that Arthur Smith is going to want to do. But again, they're not scheming to beat the Texans. They're focusing on continuing to do things for themselves. That is, fundamentals. That is, just making sure that they're doing everything as cleanly as possible. Making sure that, they're protecting the football, that there's no pre-snap penalties. Of course, they're still in the stages of installing the offense. And so you're going to see some things for sure. I don't think you're going to see, they're not going to, reach their hand deep into the bag of tricks, not for the first preseason game. So, but I do think, to your point on, at least when it comes to the gap runs, I do think gap needs to be part of what they do. I understand Arthur Smith is running a wide zone system, both Tennessee and Atlanta, but they need to be running. They need to be running some gap stuff, especially knowing that Jalen Warren has absolutely been a better gap runner in his first 2 seasons. And Najee Harris down the stretch last year had a 75% success rate after Matt Canada was fired when running in power. So yeah, they need to be running some gap stuff. Stephen A says, I heard John Reese Plumlee was returning kickoffs. Yes, he was one of the ones back there. I wouldn't call him the primary kick returner, but Would it shock me if Plumlee was one of the guys who was back there for the kickoffs tomorrow night? Not one bit. Not one bit. Yeah, it's interesting because Plumlee is very, very much a distant fourth. He's behind Kyle Allen quite a bit. Let's go here. Okay, I'll do a couple more minutes, and then okay, you guys are saying a lot of stuff about Brandon Aiyuk, so we'll try to get to it. Let's see. Well, Mr. CJ Jr. just to settle this, slot corner front runner is Bishop. Yes, he is the listed starter on the depth chart at nickel corner, at slot corner, whatever you want to call it. He is the starter right now. However, I do think that the Steelers' primary, and you won't see this tomorrow because the entire starting defense is obviously not playing. T.J. Watt's not playing. Alex Highsmith's not playing. Cam Hayward's not playing. Minkah Fitzpatrick's not playing. But I do think that their primary answer for the nickel package right now is the 3 safety package, with Deshaun Elliott playing more in the slot in the box and DeMonte Casey and Minkah Fitzpatrick playing deep. That is, I think, their number one answer to the nickel package right now. Beanie, when they do want to go to a traditional nickel where that extra defensive back isn't a safety and it is a cornerback, Beanie Bishop right now is the guy that's going out there. But he is absolutely not getting more reps at slot corner than how often the Steelers are running with the 3 safety package. So I do think, and Spice Creations does say here about the whole slot corner thing, depth chart thing. Tomlin said don't read too much into that. That's correct. Tomlin is very, very clear this time of year about not reading too much into depth charts. However, he points right to the depth chart when it comes to a quarterback competition, which he does name a quarterback competition, but then he says Russell Wilson is the starter because he's listed first on the depth chart. So I do think that anything you hear Mike Tomlin say in a press conference, just take it with a grain of salt, a little bit, to a certain extent. Jordan asks, is Bishop quick enough to play the Mike Hilton role? I don't want to try to put Beanie Bishop in the same realm or in the same discussion as Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton made himself into a very, very good slot corner in this league. So I don't want to quite put him in there. I will say that Beanie has done some very good things in practice. He has done some things where he is looking pretty good. No question about that. However, I do think that there is still quite a bit of reservation on Mike Tomlin's part right now about putting Beanie Bishop as like the starting slot corner. If Cam Sutton was not suspended, he would not be there. If Grayland Arnold hadn't been, possibly dealing with some bumps and bruises associated with play, as Mike Tomlin likes to put it, I do think that Grayland Arnold might have a bit of a step up over him. But Beanie Bishop has done enough in practice right now to at least get a look for at least one preseason game. Let's see what he can do. All right. Let's try to get to this Brandon Aiyuk stuff. Okay, so really quick before I even get into any of this, before I get into any speculation on anything, let's go over the facts here, okay? The fact of the matter is the same thing that I mentioned yesterday, and not just mentioned, but reported yesterday. The Steelers nothing's changed here. The Steelers are still, as a team source told me, in the mix and still negotiating with the 49ers for, about a trade for Brandon Aiyuk. However, nothing is agreed upon. Nothing is done, regardless of what you're seeing from social media accounts on Twitter, specifically, regardless of what you're seeing from any other reports about verbal agreements. Nothing is done. Nothing's done. Nothing's agreed upon. Not yet. It could be. And if you were to twist my arm at this point, I would probably say that the most likely scenario is that Brandon Aiyuk ends up a Steeler. However, I'm not going to sit here and stake my reputation on that because I don't definitively know that, so I'm not going to report it. Not until I have a source or multiple sources that I trust that can confirm that that's happening, and so far that's not happening. But that being said, if you twisted my arm into saying what's the most likely scenario here, I do think Brandon Aiyuk ends up a Steeler, but that's just based off of everything that's happened to this point. Now, to get to some of your comments on it, Attention fan says, or asks, what is your ideal trade package to get to Aiyuk? And there was a report yesterday that Jordan mentions here. This is no way they give up 2 first-rounders, that being the ask. I would tend to agree with that. I don't think 2 first-rounders is happening. Even if that's what the 49ers are asking for, that is not what the Steelers are going to be paying. 1 first-rounder alone, to me, is I don't think it's completely out of the question. I don't know that for sure. I'm not going to sit here and posture in a way in which I'm going to pretend to know what compensation is being discussed. I have not had anybody tell me specifics when it comes to compensation right now. So I'm not going to sit here and try to pretend and throw something up against a wall and hope it sticks. I'm not in that business. Of trying to pretend and say, oh, yes, they definitely are going to have to give up a first-round pick, or no, they're not giving up a first-round pick. I don't know. But to go back to the question, what is your ideal trade package for Aiyuk? For me personally, if the 49ers would take it, I would give up James Daniels and a first. I think that's, for the situation the 49ers are in, I think that is more than enough compensation. They get a first-round pick out of it. They upgrade their offensive line, the interior of their offensive line, and a lot of what they do on offense depends on their offensive line. They already have the best left tackle in the game. That matters, but having the rest of your offensive line worked out is good. I do think, and again, this is conjecture on my part, not reporting anything here, that there is a thought that the holdup when it comes to this not only is the compensation between the Steelers and the 49ers, but also that the 49ers, if they're only going to be getting draft picks from the Steelers, or if they are getting a player and draft picks, whatever it is, how can they possibly flip anything that they're getting in that trade and get a receiver elsewhere? I think that, especially whenever you look at the trade packages that were discussed between the Browns and the 49ers and the Patriots and the 49ers, both of those included a wide receiver. And so I don't think the Steelers have a receiver other than George Pickens that the 49ers would want. George Pickens is not going to San Francisco. Nobody's told me that, but that's just common sense on my part. I just don't foresee that happening. So it would not surprise me if that is what's going on right now when it comes to this Brandon Aiyuk holdup, however we want to categorize it, that the reason why it's not been done yet is because, that they want to get a receiver. The Steelers can't offer one, and so the 49ers are trying to figure out where else they can get one. Now, they did sign Chosen Anderson today. I don't think that that's necessarily an immediate an immediate fill-in for Brandon Aiyuk. I don't think that whatsoever. So, Joshua, listen, you like, I understand you can yawn and you can fall asleep all you want, buddy, but this is what has everybody up in a frenzy right now, man. We talked about the game for a good almost 20 minutes, man. This is what people are wanting to talk about right now. And like, honestly, it has a lot of people completely captivated because this is a big deal. Okay. Let's get aside from all the speculation. Let's talk about what the And Tyler says that's a terrible trade you just made. And listen, like I'm not saying that, and this I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an NFL GM. But and Cody also says today was a walkthrough. Yes, there was nothing to talk about for practice today. The only thing that was noteworthy to me was Deshaun Elliott was back on the field. And Tyler says a starting guard and a first-round pick. Listen, the way I go about it, my thought process behind that is that you have to give up something to get something, and what you're getting is a top 10 receiver in the NFL. You're getting a top 10 receiver in the NFL that the 49ers don't necessarily have to trade. It's not like, yes, he's requested a trade, but they don't have to trade him. They can, be like, okay, we understand you want to go play in Pittsburgh or you want to go play elsewhere. They don't have to. They can sit here and call Brandon's bluff if he's willing to miss games. Why not? Why not just say, you know what, screw it. Like, you have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl here. If you jump on the moving train with us, you have a legitimate chance. We've got the best roster in the NFL, and you have an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. Shoot, we were in the game last year, and we can go back. We absolutely can. The 49ers are, in my opinion, right now the class of the NFC, and they are the team to beat in the NFC. And with Brandon Aiyuk on that team, they are even without Brandon Aiyuk, they're still a Super Bowl contender. But having Brandon Aiyuk absolutely makes them better. They have at least four legitimate weapons on offense, with Aiyuk and Debo and Kittle and the best running back in football in Christian McCaffrey. They have, it's they don't have to trade them. So, in my opinion, you have to give up something to get something. And if you traded James Daniels, you have options. It's not Mason McCormick. You can put Zach Frazier in at center, and you can slide Nate Herbig over to right guard. Now, are you worse on the offensive line than you were with James Daniels? Of course. The tandem of Sayamalu and James Daniels is a really nice tandem at guard. I would even argue that's probably a top 10 pairing at guard in the NFL. It's very, very good. But you have to give up something to get something. Now, maybe they don't. Maybe that's overpaying. And maybe like Omar Khan hears this and he's like, yeah, Chris, we're not paying that. That's fine. I'm just of the opinion that you have to pay something significant in order to get a player of significance. That's my thought process. But again, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be an NFL GM and tell you that, hey, this is what's needed. Again, I have not been told anything when it comes to compensation. Nothing. So I'm not going to sit here and posture and pretend to know. I'm not in that game. If I don't know, I'm going to tell you I don't know. I don't know what compensation is being discussed. What I do know is that they are negotiating for Brandon Aiyuk right now. That is what I know, and so that's what I'm reporting. And that a deal is not done yet. There are a couple of other things, you guys. And so to go back to this point, because Awesome Stuff says it here. BA, Brandon Aiyuk arguably becomes the best offensive player if he comes in, right? And this is the point that I was trying to make here. Is that, and this is why it's such a big deal, huge deal. He immediately becomes the best player on offense. Immediately. He is wide receiver 1 right away. We talk about all this wide receiver 2 stuff. George Pickens is wide receiver 2 at that point. As promising as George Pickens is, Brandon Aiyuk is already a top 10 receiver in this league. He is as complete of a receiver in this game as you can possibly ask for. He is a very, very good route runner, gets great separation. He can beat man coverage. He can beat zone coverage, and he's a phenomenal blocker. He literally does everything, and he would be a perfect fit in an Arthur Smith offense because he can beat you deep. He can, and Joe says here, Aiyuk opens up GP's game. It opens up the entire offense because if you have Brandon Aiyuk and George Pickens out there, even if it's just those are the only 2 receivers and you're running 12 personnel, shoot, man, like you can't just automatically assume the Steelers are going to be running the football and going to be going with a single high look, because, man alive, that they can – Pickens and Aiyuk can tear you apart. Absolutely can tear you apart. And you've got, whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, you have got a quarterback that can absolutely throw the deep ball. And Justin Fields has also shown a very good ability in training camp to also throw some really good intermediate passes too. Not just the 20+, but the 10 to 20 as well. He's, especially on like the corner routes, he's done a very good job throwing those, specifically to Pat Freiermuth. But again, Brandon Aiyuk coming in would absolutely make this offense better. I think, honestly, the only player or players you could say would be better on this roster if Brandon Aiyuk becomes a Steeler, T.J. Watt, and then maybe Minka, maybe. Brandon Aiyuk is an immediate game changer for this team, 100%, and that's why it's such a big deal. That's why so many fans right now are so hung up on this. It's not because I'm trying to shove any kind of narrative or whatever down everyone's throats. This is just something that everybody's wanting to talk about right now, and because we're in this waiting period of what's going to happen. We know the 49ers are the Steelers are negotiating with the 49ers. Because of that, we're kind of in this waiting game of, okay, what's going to happen? So yeah, it's and Joshua says here, it says with or without, Aiyuk, the Steelers are going to see stacked boxes. Great. That's awesome. Because if you want to stack, that's the perfect, that Arthur Smith would love that. Because can you imagine them coming out with George Pickens and Brandon Aiyuk stacked on one side of the formation with 8 guys in the box? Can you imagine what Arthur Smith can draw up when it comes to a play action pass, whether it's a double post or any other concept you can think of? I can think of that. And I think that's going to gash defenses. And if that eventually gets to the point where defenses aren't going to want to stack the box, great. Now Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren can eat too. So it is an absolute game changer. And it gives you insurance in case your wide receiver 1 goes down. If George Pickens were to get injured, you would have Brandon Aiyuk still. That's a heck of a football player. If George Pickens goes down, Van Jefferson's the number 1 receiver. Van Jefferson's had a very, very good camp. Very good camp. I've been thoroughly impressed. I have said he is a very solid number 3 on almost any NFL team right now with the way he's looking. Not a number 1, not even a number 2. A number 2 on a very, very thin receiver room, which is exactly what the Steelers have right now. Let's see. There's a couple of other ones here that I wanted to get to. There was one that I wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. Okay, Ben here says, I think we're all a year early on Brandon Aiyuk. It's possible. Again, the 49ers don't have to trade him. But I do think, and this is, again, my conjecture, not covering the 49ers, that there might be too much that's already happened between the 49ers and Aiyuk for them to just say, screw it, let's stay together one more year and try to win it. Now, again, the 49ers have enough control there to be like, yeah, dude, we're not trading you. We tried to work something out with the Steelers. They didn't want to, honor the compensation that we were asking for. We couldn't get a deal together. We're just not comfortable doing it, and we're not just going to trade you just to trade you. So you can go sign with them in free agency, and best of luck to you, whatever it is. But I have a hard time. There's just a part of me that's thinking that too much has happened between the 49ers and Aiyuk, and I think that Kyle Shanahan, based off of the little that I do know about him and his coaching style and temperament, that he might be kind of over it now. And from some of the things that are being said, maybe the rest of the 49ers are kind of getting over it too. So, Okay, go ahead and take another one here. I'll just use this one to wrap it up. Stephen A says, I'm excited for some football and beers tomorrow night. That's great. That's a good attitude to have. Yes, the Steelers are still negotiating for a possible Brandon Aiyuk trade, but until it happens, just try to focus on the good things that are happening. And right now, that is that there is a preseason game tomorrow night. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to get back into that stadium and to cover a football game. It's a preseason game, but I'm excited to see what this team looks like in a stadium, because it is a different environment than obviously practicing on Chuck Noll Field here at Saint Vincent College. It's just different, whenever it's not Steelers versus Steelers. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be able to cover it for you, and I'm looking forward to it. So I want to go ahead and wrap this up. We had no breaking news during this podcast, so I'm thankful for that. But obviously, bookmark our Steelers feed if you have a browser. Just bookmark our site. All of our content's on there for free. You can, obviously subscribe and be able to, interact in the feed and comment and everything like that. So, we have, I have everything from practice today, which wasn't much. It was a glorified walkthrough. Ryan Clark and the guys from the Pivot were there. I'm wondering who their next guest is going to be. Maybe it's Tomlin again. That was a heck of an episode. Maybe it's Omar. I don't know. That'd be a heck of to have an NFL GM on a podcast like that. I think that'd be pretty cool. I have my doubts about that though, but we'll see. Anyway, and Stephen A says, tell Greg we'll say hello. Of course, Greg will be covering the game tomorrow with us. But yeah, bookmark everything with our Steelers feed, download the app, turn on notifications, because anytime anything happens, man, we're going to be letting everybody know about it. Whether it's a trade, whether it's any kind of Steelers news, we'll be all over it. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We will do one more show. We will do a show ahead of the game tomorrow. We'll see what that looks like. Obviously, it won't be from here in Latrobe. It'll be either from my basement or I don't know. We'll figure it out. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you on the flippy flip.